The action in the fast-paced Gospel of Mark opens with John the Baptist preaching and baptizing people from Jerusalem and all Judea in the Jordan River. During this time, his cousin Jesus came from Nazareth to Galilee to be baptized by John. After being baptized, the heavens were torn open, the Spirit of God descended on Jesus, and the voice of God identified him as his beloved Son. The text tells us that immediately after this, Jesus was led into the Judean wilderness. You can see from a picture like this what a bleak and barren place it was. The text talks about Jesus being alone there with the wild animals. There Satan tempted him for 40 days. During this time, John the Baptist was arrested and held probably in Machaerus, and Jesus makes his way back to Galilee where he will begin to preach. Jesus spent much of his time in Galilee, around the Sea of Galilee. This beautiful and economically important area was the center of much of the teaching and preaching that Jesus did, as well as numerous miracles. Here he calls some fishermen to be fully disciples. They left their boats probably very much like this remains of a 2,000-year-old archaeological find, to follow Jesus. Capernaum was one of the most important cities for Jesus. Located on the north shore of the Sea of Galilee, it became Jesus' adopted hometown. The house of Peter became his headquarters when Jesus was in Galilee, and the location and remains of that house have quite possibly been identified. The structure was surely used as a place for worship by early Christians, and it's very reasonable to conclude that it is actually what was Peter's house. The synagogue in Capernaum was very important as well. It was the site of much of the teaching and preaching that Jesus did. The remains of the synagogue that are visible here are not from the first century, but a closer look at the foundation shows the black basalt stones that are in all likelihood the remains of that first century synagogue where Jesus taught. Here, when Jesus taught, he amazed the people, not just because of the miracles that he worked, but because of the authoritative teaching that he did. Jesus continued to teach and work miracles not only in and around Capernaum, but throughout Galilee. And as he continued to carry out his ministry there, we see his fame was growing, the size of the crowds increasing dramatically, and not surprisingly, as we'll see as we get into chapter 2, all of this set the stage for some conflict.